Suffolk Public School Board is now open. We would have our Pledge of Allegiance by Dr. Brooke Buck.
Okay. Would you please stand for the pledge? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Buck. We would now have the certificate of the closed meeting by Attorney Waller.
Resolution of certification of the closed meeting of February the 8th, 2018, pursuant to Section 2.2-3712 of the Code of Virginia, 1950 as amended.
Second.
If board members will please vote. Motion carried.
We'd like to recognize, I think we saw Vice Mayor Bennett in the audience. We'd like to recognize, thank you, okay. For the purpose of those who would like to speak, we did not have anyone signing up for the early, on the early agenda. However, you will be privileged to speak after we go through the agenda. We will entertain your comments at that time. Thank you. We will now have reports by the Superintendent, Dr. Whitney.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. At this point, I'm going to ask Mrs. Beth Ann Bradshaw to come up to share our good news report. Ms. Bradshaw.
Good evening. As we do every month, I'm here to talk about our Good News Report, which shares some of the excitement and the wonderful things and achievements of both our staffs and our students throughout our school system. Tonight, we wanted to make the community aware of two special focuses this month that have to do with the folks up here sitting in front of us. First, the Virginia School Boards Association has designated the third week in February as School Board Clerk Appreciation Week. So Suffolk Public Schools wants to publicly thank and recognize Cynthia Chavis, our clerk of the board, and highlight the importance of her position and thank her for her dedication. School board clerks are appointed by law to fulfill their duties and responsibilities, keeping accurate records of the meetings and proceedings of the school board, maintaining frequent contact with the public, including parents, employees, on behalf of the school board and superintendent, and joining school board members to help ensure that students achieve their highest potential and providing an invaluable service for school board members and superintendents. So let's give her a thank you. In addition, Suffolk Public Schools also joins another 132 other public school divisions throughout Virginia to celebrate School Board Appreciation Month, School Board Member Appreciation Month in February. So across the state, there are almost 850 elected and appointed school board members who are being recognized for their service and dedication to public education, including our own 7 elected board members. The theme of this year's celebration, which is Advancing Opportunities for All, reflects the top priority of local school board members as they advocate for public education with local, state, and federal leaders. In Suffolk, our school board members must develop policies and make tough decisions on complex educational and social issues that impact the entire community. They bear responsibility for an annual budget of $160 million, 14,000 students, 2,000 employees, and 19 schools and 6 administrative buildings. So we have a gift bag that will look like this behind you if you make sure that you take one as a token, a small token from the school division on behalf of the students, staff, and parents of Suffolk Public Schools and the community at large. Thank you.
Next, as far as report by the superintendent, is the proposed rezoning plan. You may recall during our timeline, we said that during this month, we would ask or present to you another viewing of the proposed plan. I'm going to call to the podium Mr. Terry Napier, our Director of Plant and Facilities, to review that plan. Mr. Napier.
Good evening.
Good evening.
As you recall, some months ago, you directed the superintendent, who in turn directed a group of administrators, including myself, to take a look at zoning proposals for three things. Florence Bowser Elementary School, as you know, will be finished this spring. It will open next fall. We were asked to look at a zoning plan for that school. You also asked us to look at the John Yates Middle School Fred Cherry opening, which we also had to rezone for. We have done that. And you also asked us, while we were doing that, to take a look at rezoning citywide and see if we could come up with a proposal for that. The committee, and I'd like to recognize them if I could, consisted of 14 administrators, both building and division level. Suzanne Rice, our Assistant Superintendent, Latoya Harrison, also Assistant Superintendent, myself, John Littlefield, Director of Technology, Pam Connor, Director of Elementary Leadership, Sinette Bird, Director of Secondary Leadership, Kiba Baldwin, Director of Transportation, Annette McLam, Transportation Routing Specialist, Melody Griffith, Principal at Driver, Tara Moore, Principal at Creekside, Melvin Bradshaw, Principal at Forest Glen, Brian Thrift, Principal at John F. Kennedy, Sean Green, Principal at John Yates, and he has also been selected to be the new Principal at Fred Cherry, and Jennifer Presson, Principal at Kings Fork Middle. We thank all of them for their input. They worked very hard to come up with these proposals, and tonight we're going to go through three of them. Florence Bowser Elementary School, which would affect only Driver Elementary and Creekside Elementary. We're also going to take a look at the Colonel Fred Cherry Middle School proposal. That would affect only John Yates Middle School and the new Colonel Fred Cherry Middle School. We're also going to give you a look at our proposal for a division-wide plan. That actually is three plans, elementary, middle, and high school. It does affect all schools except Nansemond River High School, and we will explain why it does not affect that school later. But essentially, we're bringing you three proposals. Essentially, it's five. We have the Florence Bowser, we have the Cherry, then we have the elementary, middle, and high school plans. If you were to decide on one of those plans, one plan would not affect the other. So the feeder schools would remain the same. It would affect the zone lines, but one is not dependent on the other. So, I don't know what just happened. I'm sure that was me. There we go. We're going to remind you and remind those people that are watching of what the criteria was. We did set a criteria back when we started this process. The criteria was approved by the board. It was followed by the committee when they came up with all of these proposals. So we just wanted to remind everybody what they were. The Florence Bowser rezoning criteria, it was our intention to open Florence Bowser with 850 students, give or take, in September of this year, and we are going to do that. We were going to include the current Driver Elementary student population of 596 students and expand the Driver attendance zone to include 250 to 275 additional students from Creekside Elementary. We also did that. We were going to maintain attendance zones, as we always do, using established roadways, geographical features, neighborhood boundaries, those types of things. We weren't going to carve out neighborhoods. We were going to try to reduce mobile unit usage at schools affected by whatever rezoning plan we were talking about, and we were going to attempt to maintain diversity that closely matched the school division. That was the Florence Bowser criteria. We also had criteria for Cherry Middle. We were going to try to open Cherry with 650 students. We were going to redraw the current John Yates Middle School zone to eliminate overcrowding in that building, maintain a contiguous attendance zone using established roadways and geographical features to the greatest extent possible. And just to define contiguous, we view it as if we can put our pencil down on a map at one point and draw a line all the way around that zone and never pick up our pencil, that's a contiguous zone. It's not a square, rectangle, circle. It just means we aren't carving small pieces out of one place and sending them somewhere else. We were going to respect established neighborhood boundaries wherever possible, reduce or eliminate the use of mobile units at John Yates Middle School, and it currently has 17 mobile units. And we were also going to attempt to maintain diversity at that building, along with Cherry. So that was the middle school, Fred Cherry, John Yates only criteria. Then we had a set of criteria for the division-wide considerations, establish contiguous attendance zones again, respect established neighborhood boundaries wherever possible, redistribute citywide the student population to more efficiently take advantage of available seats in all buildings, reduce mobile unit usage across the division. We currently have 82 mobile units in use, attempt to create more efficient bus routes, and attempt to maintain diversity that closely matches the school division overall. So that was the criteria that was set way back when. We did follow that criteria, and now we have brought you 3 plans for you to consider, and we're going to run through them tonight. Any questions that you have, we can certainly entertain those. And just a reminder that there's additional information on all of these plans on the school division website. You can take a look at those. You can actually put an address in there, and it will give you all of the information and how all of these plans would affect your child at your address. So, beginning with the Florence Bowser only proposal, it does meet all the stated criteria as mentioned earlier. It includes Driver Elementary and Creekside Elementary School only. All other current zones would remain unchanged. This plan would reduce the student count at Creekside Elementary from 952 to approximately 711 students, which would put Creekside Elementary at about 82% of its design capacity, or actually its programmed capacity. It includes all of the current Driver Elementary zones, so all of those students would remain at Bowser under this plan. And it opens Florence Bowser with approximately 730 students, which is about 75% of the capacity of the new building. So all of those numbers are good. At the bottom, there's a chart, and it shows you the ethnic breakdown. On the left, we have the current breakdown at both Creekside and Driver. As you can see, currently at Creekside, we have 59% black, 30% white, 11% other. Under this plan, those numbers would be 61% black students at Creekside, 28% white, and 11% other. That's a delta between black and white students of 33. Currently, it's 29. So that's, statistically, that's pretty good. Driver Elementary, currently, black students 39%, white students 50, other 12. Under the proposed plan, those numbers would change from 44 to 44, 45, and 11. So that delta changes from 11 to 1. So those numbers are good as well. So that's what would happen if we only zoned Florence Bowser. This is the maps. If you look on the left, that is the current elementary zone, and I know this is a little bit hard to see. I don't think I can make it bigger. Can I, John? Okay. But basically what you can see, current elementary zones on the left, the proposed zones on the right. If you can look, Northern Shores is the blue zone at the top. If you drop down one to that purple area, that would be the new Creekside zone. And basically what we did, if you look right next to the right of the Creekside Elementary, that little blue circle, that represents the school itself. If you look just to the right, there's a section there and I'm going to try to use this pointer. I don't know if you can see it. Right there. We took a section right there north and east of Shoulders Hill Road, basically to include the Pewsville area. We carved that out of the Creekside zone, made it a part of the new Florence Bowser zone, and that's how we came up with the numbers that we just showed you. This is a relatively simple rezoning, but it accomplishes what we set out to accomplish if we were to decide just to rezone the new elementary school. Any questions about the elementary only with Florence Bowser before we move to the next one? Colonel Fred Cherry Middle School proposal. This one also meets all of the stated criteria. It includes only John Yates Middle School and Fred Cherry Middle School. This proposal would reduce the student count at John Yates Middle from about 1,228 to approximately 554 students. That would put John Yates at about 71% of its program capacity. Right now it's over 100, well over 100. So that number looks real good. It would actually divide only the John Yates Middle School zone, and when we get to the map, you'll see it's not quite 50-50 where it's divided, but it's pretty close. And that would this plan would open Cherry Middle School with approximately 643 students, which is about 80% of the new middle school's capacity. If you look at the chart for the ethnic breakdowns, Fred Cherry currently has nothing on the current, but if you look at John Yates, currently it's 50% black students, 39% white students, 11% classified as other. If you look at the proposed, Fred Cherry would be 56% black students, 31% white students, 13% other. John Yates would go to 44% black students, 47% white, 9% other. So those numbers look pretty good as well. Any questions about, well, let me go to the map. On the left, again, current middle school zones. On the right is the proposed zones. And if you look right there, that line, basically that line starts just before you get to the Mills-Godwin Bridge, runs down Bridge Road, down Shoulders Hill. That is a railroad bed that runs parallel to Pewsville Road. So everything east and north of that line would attend Cherry. Everything south and west of that line down to the Kennedy zone would attend John Yates. So again, this only affects those two zones. All the other middle school zones would remain unchanged. Any questions about that plan? Division-wide criteria for elementary, middle, and high school. The plan that we came up with, the proposal, it does meet all of the stated criteria. It includes all schools except Nansemond River High School. And let me qualify that before we go any further. Because of where Nansemond River High School is located in its zone, it's located on, and I'll show it to you on the map in a minute, it's located on the western edge of its zone and it's surrounded by neighborhoods. If you've ever been out there, you know what I'm talking about. For us to do anything with the Nansemond River High School zone in terms of reducing student population there, we had two choices. Neither one of them were good ones. We would have to take students from all the way up north of Bridge Road and take them all the way out to Creekside. The bus ride would just been terrible. The other option would have been to take neighborhoods that actually sit around that high school, zone them into Kings Fork zone, adjust that zone line such that Nansemond River High School would actually be sitting in the Kings Fork Middle School zone. That made absolutely no sense to us. so we decided to leave that alone. That's why Nansemond River is the only zone under this proposal that doesn't experience some change. That chart at the bottom shows you the school names, the proposed enrollment under this plan, and then that last column is the percentage of capacity as compared to the program capacity. So Booker T. Washington would be at 91% capacity, et cetera. The only ones that are over 100 under this plan would be Elephants Fork. It would still be at 103%, and Nansemond River High School would still be at 104%. All the other schools would be less than 100. This is a big chart. This also shows the ethnic breakdown if we were to rezone every school except Nansemond River. And I'm not going to go through these numbers. You can glance at that. But basically what we're looking at here on the left, each school is listed. This is elementary. Each elementary school is listed. The black, white, and other count is listed under that current column. And then when you jump to the right, you have the same numbers with black, white, other under the division-wide proposal. Now, I will qualify this chart by saying most of those numbers, when compared to each other, actually get better. There are a couple that get worse. And just let me say, I think it's virtually impossible to come up with any plan that gives us 50-50 across all schools. I don't think it can be done without busing, and nobody's in favor of that. So we get these numbers. The numbers are what they are. They're not bad numbers, but there are some changes as far as those ethnic breakdowns are concerned.
Mr. Napier,
Yes, ma'am.
and you're saying busing in terms of, because everybody rides the bus, but
If
you're
we were
saying
to
busing,
yes,
you're
if we-
saying busing to for desegregation purposes.
Purposes only.
So that's
Yes. And as a committee, we weren't in favor of even entertaining that idea. On the left is the current elementary zones. On the right, under this proposal, would be the proposed elementary zones. You can see some changes here, and I know it's difficult to see, but if you start at the top, which is Northern Shores, and you move over to the top of this map, which is the current Northern Shores, basically what's happening here, the Northern Shores zone, the Creekside zone, the Bowser zone, we're pushing those lines north and east under this plan is basically what we're doing. If you jump over here to the Oakland zone, you can see how the line runs here now. We've pushed it south, not so much east, into its neighboring zone. This area here, if you notice, if you took that 1 square mile area that used to be downtown Suffolk, when we still had Nansemond County, basically there's 4 schools that pull students, 4 elementary schools that pull students out of that 1 mile area. If you come over here to the proposed, that goes up to 6. So what we're doing is there is a cluster of students in the downtown area that is very dense. There's a lot of kids there. So to make this plan work, we had to take these zones, push them into the downtown area and start pulling some of those kids out to different schools. It works, but it is a big change. Some of the other changes, if you look at, this is the Pioneer Zone currently. If you come over here, and this is the Booker T Zone. What we've done is made the Booker T Zone larger and pushed that line to the west. We've made the Pioneer Zone smaller, also pushing that line to the west. So that shifted some kids from the Pioneer Zone to the Booker T Zone. So most of this was designed to get enough students in each building where we didn't have an overcrowding situation at any single building. So that's how we came up with these zones. At the same time, keeping bus rides under 60 minutes. So that's the elementary. Any questions about the elementary division-wide before we move to the middle? All right, middle school. I am fighting this thing. Here we go. Hands off. This is the middle school ethnic breakdown under the division-wide plan. As you can see, those numbers on the left, again, we have the current breakdowns. Forest Glen Middle School, 42, 52, and 6. Under this plan, it would change to 49, 45, and 6. None of these numbers gave us any concern. John F. Kennedy Middle School, currently 78, 16, and 6. Those numbers would change to 69, 26, and 5. John Yates Middle School, 50, 39, and 11. Those numbers would change 40, 52, and 8. Kings Fork Middle School, currently 64, 26, and 10. Their numbers would change to approximately 66, 24, and 10. And then Cherry Middle School would open at 57, 30, and 13. So there were some changes to these numbers. It did shift some students around. We're going to take a look at the maps. So again, on the left, you have the current middle school zones. On the right, you have the proposed zones. And again, up here, you have the John Yates zone. There it is currently. So what we did was take it as we did in the John Yates Cherry only model. We divided that zone between Cherry and John Yates. As you can see in the Kings Fork zone, right down here, we extended this zone line down and pulled some of those students out of Forest Glen and into Kings Fork. If you look at the current Forest Glen zone here and the current Kennedy zone, we pushed the Kennedy line to the west. We also pushed the Forest Glen line to the west. So we're taking a few more students out of Forest Glen and into Kennedy and lowering the student population at Forest Glen. Any questions about the middle school zones or maps? All right, high school. Again, the ethnic breakdowns for the high school. Lakeland High School currently 65% black students, 30% white, 5% other. It would change to 61, 34, and 5. That's nothing dramatic, but there is a change there. Kings Fork High School currently 63, 29, and 8. That school would change to 65, 27, and 8. Nothing real dramatic there either. And the Nazarene River Zone would stay exactly like it is. Again, the current high school zones are on the left. The proposed zones are on the right. Again, if you look at Nazarene River, it would remain unchanged as to what it is now. If you look at the Kings Fork zone, this area right here, we pushed south and west to pick up those students there who currently attend Lakeland. They would now attend Kings Fork High School. It wasn't many students. I believe it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 80. But it did make a little bit of difference. And then the Lakeland zone is here. In fact, I just told you that backwards. Actually, what we did, the Lakeland zone extended into the Kings Fork zone. So we're pulling kids out of Kings Fork and into Lakeland. It was about 80 kids, I believe. So it's not anything real dramatic on the high school level or the middle school level for that matter, but elementary, quite a change in elementary. So, those are the three proposals that we have brought to you for your consideration. There is a lot of information regarding each zone and the effect of each zone, as I said, on the website, if anybody's interested in looking at that. We have not developed the narrative outlines for these yet. We were going to let you make a decision before we did that, but that is what we have brought to you to look at tonight. Any questions about any of that?
Napier, one of our original concerns was the underutilization of Lakeland High School.
Yes, sir.
How much have we changed that?
About 80 students. If we went to that plan, it would be about 80 additional students at Lakeland. I believe that was the number, wasn't it? Yeah. And 80 fewer students at Kings Fork High School. It wasn't a huge change, but without running those zone lines way north and then picking up neighborhoods that would have caused us to pick up too many students, it's difficult because you have to weigh that where you put that line. You know, you're trying to get some students from one zone to another, but if you go too far, then you've pulled too many students and you've just traded one problem for another as far as overcrowding. So we're bringing the numbers down at Kings Fork by 80. We're taking the numbers up at Lakeland by 80. We're leaving Nansemond River like it is under this proposal.
What is the longest, furthest ride the elementary school students are going to have from this proposal?
I spoke to Transportation, Annette McLam, yesterday, and they calculate that no student would have a ride greater than 60 minutes. Mr. Baldwin, where are we at now as far as bus ride length? Currently, we have nobody riding over 60 minutes, so that would remain the same. And that was our goal. We didn't want anybody on the bus more than an hour. So under any of, currently we're at that number, so that's not going to change with any of these plans.
Mr. Napier, I know we probably didn't talk about this, but I'm just curious to know about this. I know that middle schools feed into certain high schools.
Yes.
Would there be any way that's reasonable to adopt the Fred Cherry plan and the Florence Bowser plan and not do the citywide, but to move more students from Kings Fork High School to Lakeland High School? And that's kind of mixing up plans. And I'm only asking this because I'm not familiar with exactly the way we feed middle schools into high schools.
Right. The Fred Cherry Yates plan, you could adopt without affecting anything else.
Right.
The Florence Bowser or the Driver Creekside plan, which would be the Florence Bowser plan, you
Right.
could adopt that. It's not going to affect any other zone.
Right.
If you wanted to move kids from Kings Fork to Lakeland and adopt just the high school portion, that's not going to affect any other zone either on middle school. The elementary, the middle school, the high school division-wide plans aren't connected to each other. One doesn't rely on the other for anything.
Right. It's just that the reason I'm asking is because it seems that if we just left those elementary schools alone
Yes.
and left the middle schools alone too, but I'm just wondering, the question was, if Lakeland is underpopulated, we wouldn't even necessarily have to consider it this year, but I was just wondering if there was any way that just apart from those two plans, if we could populate Lakeland better in a totally separate.
Well, the answer is yes, that would be possible.
Okay.
Now, let me ask you this. Is Kings Fork underpopulated or populated? Because I was just looking at
Kings
the only
Fork
school that's
currently-
over 100 is at 85%.
Kings Fork currently is at 92% capacity.
Okay, that's,
Lakeland currently is at 69.8, 70% capacity. Nansemond River currently is at 103.5, or 104% capacity.
Well-
So Kings Fork, technically, no, Kings Fork is not overcrowded at this point. It's at 92%.
that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
And if moving those 80 families or 80 students is not going to have that great an impact on,
No, because Nansemond River, the only school over 100%, still going to be over 100%.
it's still
Right.
going to be over
Yeah.
100%.
And there's really nothing
So
good we
I
can
was
do
just-
there.
Well,
We
we're going
tried.
to build a new high school. That'll be one down the line because the northern end's going to continue to, it seems to be growing. And it just as you said, there's not a reasonable way to rezone that the way that, and
Not and keep bus rides where we would like them.
I know Mr. Bennett would completely support the idea of going ahead and building a new high school in that area because they completely support putting more housing there. So,
No, when we talk about the 80 moving,
Uh-huh.
we have special programs. So 10 or 15 of those students could be in the IB program, or it still wouldn't hit the fact
Yes,
of
none
numbers.
of that, when we rezone, none of that can be taken into account.
Okay.
Basically, what we're taking into account is where is there a house and where is there a student in that house? Special programs, JK, pre-K, all of those kinds of things, we can't zone based on that because those students come from all over
Right.
the division. It's the same way with IB programs, AP, all of that. Those kids are spread out everywhere. So when we looked at rezoning, we simply looked at where do students live and how can we zone those students based on where they live.
And I think it's important to realize, too, that's why it's important, although when we talk about district-wide rezoning, it does eliminate all of our mobile units. But when we then talk about special programming and placement of those programs, it could very well mean a mobile unit here or there type of thing. So this plan, as we know it, looking at addresses and number of students, it does eliminate all mobile units. But when we get into special programming, it may change that some.
I guess one of my concerns would be, especially with the idea of just switching high schools, if those students have been together from elementary school to middle school, and then all of a sudden we take 80 up and carve them out and send them somewhere else, I guess that would be a concern for me. It just looking at a high school to switch them, especially when it's not going to make that much difference in the grand scheme of things, because the school that we do have that's overcrowded, we can't impact anyway, not in a realistic way.
That's true.
You also may recall when we opened up Kings Fork High School years ago, we gave juniors and seniors the option of staying. So out of that 80, I'm sure there are some juniors and seniors. If you stick with that practice of allowing juniors and seniors stay, that decreases that 80.
the other way to do it would be to, for example, I think Ms. Skeeter was kind of alluding to this. If you moved Project Lead the Way to Lakeland High School, for example, then you could, that way you can move students or move the IB program. But, I know that's not relevant right now anyway. That'll be,
Project Lead the Way
What
is
is
already at Lakeland, the
And by-
biomedical program.
I'm wrong. I meant the, I'm
Pathways.
sorry.
You're
I'm-
talking about the engineering program.
I
Actually,
meant
both of
the
them do fall under Project Lead the Way.
Yeah, I was referring to the Project Lead the Way, the engineering program that's at Nansemond River High School. But I think that's kind of out of the scope of what we're talking about now, right now anyway.
Thank you, Mr. Napier. As you know, according to your timeline that you developed for rezoning, the March 8th meeting is the date that you have placed on the calendar as far as voting on a plan. However, prior to that, we thought it was appropriate to share with you the results of the survey, community, parents, and students' input regarding the rezoning plan. At this time, I'm going to call to the podium Dr. LaToya Harrison, our Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction, who will be introducing our data analyst to share with you the results of the rezoning plan as well as the schedule change survey results. Dr. Harrison.
Thank you, Dr. Whitney. Good evening, Chairman Copeland, board members, and Dr. Whitney. As Dr. Whitney mentioned, we are going to be updating you this evening on the survey results, and I'd like to call up to the podium Sean Dickerson. He is our supervisor of data and research, and he's going to share those results with you this evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Chairman Copeland, school board members, and Dr. Whitney. As Dr. Harrison said, my name is Sean Dickerson, the supervisor of data and research for the school division. Tonight, I will be presenting the results from the rezoning survey and also the scheduling change survey. I'll review the results from the rezoning survey first, and then welcome questions, and then we'll move towards the scheduling change survey. The rezoning survey consisted of 9 total items that included both close-ended and open-ended response. Respondents were asked to indicate their preference towards 3 rezoning proposals, which are listed on the slide. The survey was administered online during the months of December and January, and there were a total of 562 responses from self-identified parents, students, staff, and others. This slide displays the percentage of each respondent group who favored either the citywide proposal or the Florence Bowser only proposal. Additionally, based on the open-ended comments that were provided, the most common reasons for why each zoning proposal was chosen is displayed on their respective columns. As can be seen at the bottom, the division total percentage of respondents who preferred to rezone the entire city was 33%, whereas 67% favored rezoning only the single area. The top reason provided for only rezoning the Florence Bowser area was that the respondent preferred the current school they attended, the distance to the new school wasn't favorable, and they didn't feel the need for a citywide change. They also indicated that this proposal would cause less of an impact on families, and that student performance may also be impacted by the citywide rezoning. Those in favor of a citywide rezoning responded with reasons that included distance, desiring to stay at their current school. They were also generally supportive of the proposal and indicated that it would help with overcrowding and diversity in the school division. With regard to the middle school proposal, the percentage of respondents who preferred to rezone the entire city was 31%, whereas 69% favored rezoning only the single area. The top reasons provided for rezoning the single area was related to distance, preference for their current school, and they didn't feel a need for a citywide change. They also indicated that they were generally supportive of this option and it would cause less family hardship. Those in favor of the citywide rezoning also responded with reasons that included distance and desiring to stay at the current school. However, some expressed a preference for the new school they would be zoned for if the citywide proposal was chosen. As with the citywide elementary school proposal, they also responded that this proposal could help with overcrowding and express support for the change. High school. With regard to the high school proposal, the percentage of respondents who preferred to rezone at this level was 24%. 76% favored making no changes at the high school level. The top reason provided for no rezoning changes were related to not wanting to change the schools, distance, potential impacts on student performance. For this option, they also indicated there was no reason or need to rezone the high schools, and if they were rezoned, it could cause a family hardship and subsequently less involvement. Those in favor for the high school rezoning proposal responded with reasons that included it could help with overcrowding, there was a school preference, and they supported the change and distance. This concludes the results from the rezoning survey. I welcome any questions you have at this time.
What was your response rate for the entire survey?
So
when we think of the general population?
We can't accurately count a response rate for these surveys, and the reason is we have the other category. So other category could be community members, and there's no way to define a denominator for that group.
How about for parents? What do you believe that our are we looking at when I only see
So
small numbers of parents who responded?
there was a total of 446 respondents that identified themselves as a parent.
Well, you know, it's interesting that in general, when you send out a survey, I don't mean just schools, but I mean anybody sends out a survey, aren't there pretty low response in general, or can you generalize about that at all?
In the academic world, for parents, a 20% response rate is considered a significant response. That's really a goal, is to hit a 20%.
That's what I thought. I thought it would be overall pretty.
Right, for other populations like students where they're more captured, an 80% or higher response rate is considered really good for that one. But parents are a tough one to get to respond.
Right, so out of our 14,000 plus students, we have 446 responses from parents. Okay.
No. 33% response by parents.
At 20.
The goal is to get 20% on a parent survey.
What was the percentage that we received?
We can't really calculate that accurately. So I can tell you that there was
46, you said.
parents.
14,000 students, and we have 20,000 parents, and we get 400 and some response. Somebody who's really good in math could come up with that percentage, but
But you'd also have to assume in that case that students have more than one parent, some have.
that's why I said if we have 14,000 students and we just guesstimate that we have 20,000 parents, and you get 450 responses, then that would, it's not relevant.
2.2%.
Okay. That's not high. Well, thank you for that, math teacher.
Other question? Thank you.
So, moving on to the scheduling change survey. This one, too, consisted, it's 7 items total and included both closed-ended and open-ended comments. Respondents were asked to indicate the preference towards the current or proposed school schedule, and as with the rezoning survey, this was administered during the same time frame. There were a total of 1,990 responses from self-identified parents, students, staff, and other. And once again, as with the last one, they could indicate multiple roles. As shown on the slide, only 37% at the bottom of division-wide respondents indicated they preferred the proposed school schedule change, whereas 63% indicated otherwise. Students were the group most opposed to the proposed schedule, followed by parents. On the other hand, 64% of staff members were in favor of the proposed schedule. However, with that group, it's important to note that although 64% were in favor of the schedule change, high school, 24% were in favor of the schedule change, middle school was roughly half, and elementary school was 82% in favor. So you have a vast difference depending on the level you're looking at. Those in favor of keeping the current schedule indicated concerns about childcare and safety, scheduling issues with students who play sports, work, or participate in extracurricular activities, and especially at the high school level, concerns were also expressed regarding having adequate time to complete homework and participate in tutoring opportunities after school. For those who preferred the proposed schedule, They indicated the new schedule could allow students to obtain more sleep and therefore be more alert at school in the mornings, and that the earlier times were more beneficial for elementary, hence why we saw the difference in the levels. They also stated they were generally supportive of the change and it would allow more family time, especially for elementary students. And it also could help some families with childcare. Those are the results from the scheduling change survey. Do you have any questions for me at this time?
Questions?
This was our online survey? Okay.
Yes, yeah, it was the online generic survey that was sent out.
Take into account people that spoke at the public hearings? Were they included in the survey?
If they responded to the
If they
survey,
responded online.
they had some of the results in terms of the comments were if board members received emails or if the school division received emails, those were also considered in the comment review and categorization.
Further comments? Questions? Mr. Superintendent.
Just a reminder that also on March 8th, you have on your timeline that you would be voting on the schedule change as well. So we have those two items scheduled for March 8th for your vote. The next item that I'd like to present to you is a additional option of the proposed school schedule changes. And I say that I'm presenting this simply because we are being somewhat responsive to the input that we have received based on what you've received, based on the survey results. And so I'm going to call to the podium Drs. Harrison and Rice to share with you a proposed school schedule change that's different from what you're familiar with right now. Dr. Rice.
Thank you, Dr. Whitney. Chairman Copeland, board members, good evening. So just as Dr. Whitney said, in light of the survey results, we thought it would be a good idea to bring you another option to look at with these bus tier proposals. The first slide is the one that you saw last month, which is the current schedule that you see there. And as indicated at that last presentation, we noted that the difficulty is, especially in the afternoon at dismissal time, the small difference between the high school tier, tier 2, and the first elementary tier, tier 3. In the afternoon, that 35 minutes is just not an adequate amount of time to get students home and then to that elementary school for pickup on time. So last month, we also gave you this option, which was to do a 3-tier, providing an hour in between each tier, which would be adequate time to get buses where they need to be. But in addition, we looked at this one with putting high school at the last tier and the elementary in the middle tier. And obviously you saw the results from the survey on that. So the second option then is to go back to the original middle school, high school, elementary in 3 tiers, but basically doing away with that first elementary tier so that the elementaries are all on 1 tier. Again, the quick recap is just making sure that we do move away from a 4-tier system because we don't have enough time between the 2nd tier and 3rd tier. And then finally, we want to make sure that we do have 1 hour between each tier so that we have on-time arrivals and on-time dismissals. At this time, Dr. Harrison is going to discuss with you the 10-minute additional time that we're going to add to the elementary day, or hope to add to the elementary day.
Dr. Rice?
Yes.
I just want to say one thing. I guess the parents understand this, but I just want to make it clear that the reason that we are having this problem in the first place is that we have a finite number of buses and a finite number of bus drivers. And we're always looking for more bus drivers. I don't know, somebody said in sending responses to me at one time suggested that we were firing bus drivers, and that's just absolutely not true. But the reason that this proposal that you just made would make a lot of sense is because the largest number of schools we have are the elementary schools.
That is correct.
So the idea is that you use those buses at the, for the middle school and then the high school, and then we have an hour, and then we have all of those buses at our disposal to pick up elementary kids. So we're not just trying to mess with people's schedules, and we're trying to make it work for the number of buses that we have and the number of drivers we have.
That's correct, and to make it more efficient.
That's right,
Overall,
yes.
Any other questions? I apologize, I didn't ask for questions. Okay.
Dr. Rice. And one of the additional benefits for both options would be increasing the elementary instructional time. And so we did share that with the previous proposal with option 1, and that also would continue to be a benefit with the second option that we are proposing. And so we're proposing that we add 10 additional minutes to the elementary school schedule. Currently, elementary school students are in school 6 hours and 15 minutes, which equates to 5 hours and 35 minutes of instructional time. And we propose changing that to 6 hours and 25 minutes, which would give us 5 hours and 45 minutes of instructional time. And some of the advantages that are shared in the last presentation was that increasing the instructional time for elementary school students would also allow us to provide a little more planning time for our teachers, elementary teachers, during the school day. And the 10 additional minutes would also equate to approximately 36 additional hours of instructional time in a school year, which actually also would give us approximately 6 banked days for inclement weather. And we all know just recently with all the inclement weather that we had that it was a little bit of a challenge with the makeup days and so forth. And so this would give us quite a bit more of a cushion in terms of banked days for inclement weather, and would also give us the opportunity to provide more half days for teacher planning and record keeping in the with our elementary school with the school calendar for elementary schools.
Dr. Harrison, with the time that we have already this year, right now, put 10 minutes on the schedule, that would be no more than what what the superintendent has planned from now until June, right?
Absolutely. So currently, schools are getting out our elementary B schools are actually getting out 10 minutes later, so I think that puts them at 4 o'clock now.
Right.
So, so it would be, but currently, with the proposed schedule, it would be 3:50 for all elementary schools. That would be the dismissal time next year for all elementary schools. So that would be a change for our elementary A schools in particular.
Right. Elementary A, as of last Monday, are being dismissed at 3:45 because of the 10 additional minutes. If you were to adopt this schedule, that would be 5 additional minutes, 3:50.
In the questionnaires, there was concern about if the bank day, in some years, the bank days aren't used. What happens to those bank days? I mean, do we cut off time at the end of the year, or is it just, I'm only asking it because parents were asking it or teachers were asking it in the questionnaires.
That's a very popular question, and that's certainly something that has not been determined yet. I mean, we will be presenting the proposed calendar to the board for you to decide upon, but generally, I don't think that's ever been the case in the past that those days have been given back. I think it just becomes additional instructional time.
But it's something that can be considered. The only thing we have to take into consideration is that we develop pacing guides for the instructional year. But it's not unreasonable to consider that to see how that might work. It might be something that the calendar committee can consider, bring back to the board, and see how that might work as far as sharing the makeup schedule and what we might do with those bank days in the event that we don't use them.
Additional questions? Okay, thank you very much.
The last item under the superintendent's report is calendar of special events, and if you turn to page 27, you'll see there are a number of events that are taking place. Perhaps the one thing that I want to point out is the non-traditional career extravaganza that takes place on February 15th, Thursday. This is where we have a career fair, but non-traditional. In other words, we may highlight the male nurse or the the male preschool teacher. This is an event that we've done this for many years, and it's certainly something that we encourage our students to participate in, as well as community members to participate in. And that concludes the superintendent's report. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. We now have a consent agenda. Will the members look at the consent agenda and see if anything they would like to remove or would like to approve the entire agenda?
That we accept the consent agenda as is.
Second.
Board members will please vote. Motion carried.
Thank you. Now we have unfinished business. Dr. Whitney?
Yes, sir. This is the first presentation of the superintendent's proposed financial plan for 2018-2019. I'm going to call to the podium Ms. Wendy Forsman, our Executive Director of Finance. Ms. Forsman.
Thank you.
I will say, as she's preparing, two main things you'll find in this budget, two areas of focus. The first one being, of course, the cost to open the two new schools. So you'll see a number of new positions and operating costs to open those schools or to run those schools. The other one is salaries. As we've said each year, the focus is to try to increase not just our teacher salary, but all of our staff salary. And I think you'll see what we have planned for that as Ms. Forsman presents.
Good evening. As we bring this tonight, before we get started, I want to point out some additional additions we've made to the financial plan document this year. Each program has a listing of the changes for 18-19 in the bottom of the program. So, for instance, if you'll turn to page 35, Elementary General Education. Do you have your books? If you do, on the bottom, you will see the positions that were added this year. And if a position was moved from this program to another program, it will show that and tell you where it was moved to. Does everyone see that in their books? Do you have your book with you to see that? Page 35 in the budget book, in the financial plan book.
Oh. The other book. Sorry.
It's all right, okay. Everyone's there. You can see on the bottom, it gives you the changes, tells you, for instance, that we had a dean position that was reduced here as a teacher and moved to assistant principal. If we went to the Office of the Principal program, you would see where that dean was added. So we've done this for clarity this year to really give people a better idea of what's changed in the program. And so on the different pages where these changes have been made, where we've added staff for the new middle school and the new and the Florence Bowser, we've got all those changes here for you and for the public to see. So we just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that. In addition, we've got out on the website an Ask a Question. So when folks have questions about the budget, they can ask the questions and we will be happy to answer them. So we're trying to make it easier for people to get answers to their questions, and we'll use that information to develop our frequently asked questions. So the entire budget is based around the school board's goals. And every year, the school board looks at the goals and develops goals and changes them. And each program sets targets and objectives under these goals. And then the financial plan reflects how we're going to meet those targets and objectives under the goals in order to make the program successful. So you can see that in each program has targets, strategic targets, objectives, and tells you what goal they're trying to meet. The budget calendar that we have in the book describes in detail the process and how we come up with this, and begins in September when we send these sheets to the principals and for them to discuss with their staff and communities to make decisions around what they're going to do. In addition to that, when they send those requests back, those requests go on a consolidated list that then the principals can see what's happening to what they've requested. And so they can see even
this year what happened to last year's request, and they can see this year what those requests are, and if someone has said that they've put it in their budget, or it needs to wait, or what's happening with it, if there's another way to fund it. So the principal has a way to see what they have requested all the way through to the end. So if they see something that's not happening, they can call and say, what happened with this particular piece? So we've tried to make that piece more transparent for the principals, more transparent for the staff, and help everyone understand, here's a request and what is happening to that request. For the proposed financial plan tonight, you can see that the total budget would become $168.1 million. That's a 4.34% increase. The operating fund would be $148.2 million. The grants fund remains unchanged at $11.3 million, and the food service fund increases by 2.3% to $8.4 million. The total operating fund increase is $6.9 million. If we look at revenue for all funds, you can see that the state revenue comprises 58.27% of the budget, or 86.3%. The city appropriation as proposed would be $59.8 million at 40.35%, and federal funds and other funds are under 1%. If we look at it by major classification, which means where do we spend that money, you can see that instruction gets 74.32%, or $124.9 million. Administration and attendance gets 2.2%, operations and maintenance 8.23%, technology 4%. You can see it as we go around the little circle, that you can see that each piece has its own percentage and own amount, but you can see the majority is spent on instruction. If we look at it by salaries and benefits, as well as operating costs, you can see that 85.93% belongs to salaries and benefits. When we look at the revenue highlights, the state revenue increased to $86.3 million this year. That's a $2.9 million increase, and it includes partial funding for a 2% raise as of December 2018, as proposed by the governor.
I'm sorry, Ms. Forsman, if you
Yes,
don't
sir.
mind, could you share, when you say partial funding, exactly what that refers to?
Certainly. It doesn't begin until December. The funding wouldn't come from the state until December, and they only fund prevailing cost, which means an average cost across the state of Virginia, for the SOQ funded positions that they offer us. So when I say partial, I mean part of a part, not actual cost in any way, shape, or form. And of course, then part of a year, because they start at December 1st.
Are there, is compared to the total positions?
It hasn't changed by much. I don't have that number in my head right now. I'm sorry, but I have the SOQ positions. I'll be happy to get it to the board. We have, every year they give us SOQ positions, and it has not changed much over the last 4 years. I will get that information, however.
But Ms. Forsman, but we're talking about, in the SOQ positions, we're talking about math teachers, English teachers, what other
principals, assistant principals,
but
custodians, IT people, they pick up a piece of most every.
But not art teachers, not music teachers, not foreign language teachers.
Those are included in total for elementary and total. They expect those to be part of the total, but they don't give you individual amounts for those. Yes,
Right.
ma'am. They give you totals by number of students. But as you can see, in 2009, fiscal year 2009, the state funding was $86.4 million. This is the first year we've come close to 2009 funding, 10 years ago.
What is the number of students they consider in each class, the state?
It depends on the level, and it depends also on the type of school and their free and reduced lunch rate, because those schools with different free and reduced lunch rates have different student-teacher ratios. So it really does depend on the school. For the city appropriation request, the request is increased by $4 million, and so it would be $59.8 million to get the total revenue increase of $6.9 million. On the expense side, raises, teachers each receive a $3,000 raise. Every teacher on every step of the scale would see $3,000 more than they currently make. Support staff would get a 2% cost of living adjustment, which means the entire scale would be changed by 2%. And support staff that are permanent part-time would receive a 1% increase. In addition, the nurses would receive a year 1 of 3 grade increase as a result of the comparability study that we did on nurses with surrounding districts. And we would establish a bus driver scale. So they would have a separate scale. It would not be part of the support scale, and it would remove the compression that currently exists on that scale, and it would increase starting pay from $12.30 to $12.61 an hour. So starting pay would increase as well. So total cost of raises is $4.7 million of the $6.9 million.
Oh, how many hours do a bus driver drive per day? What?
Hours a day.
6 hours. Let's calculate on 6. Okay. Thank you.
So the other portion of the budget is dedicated to opening the 2 new schools. And you can see here, for Colonel Fred Cherry, you can see the different teachers and administrative staff, custodial staff, guidance, and file clerks that would be added. That would be $1.2 million to add those, for a total of 23.7 positions. With utilities, and in utilities, I'm including insurance on the building, water, sewer, electric, heating, all that would be $400,300 for a total increased cost to open Colonel Fred Cherry Middle School of $1.6 million. Florence Bowser would add 2 new positions, special ed teachers for $116,000, have utilities increase of $400,300 again, with an increased cost of $516,300. And the reason we have increased costs, because as you know, we're not closing down Driver. That school is not going to be completely closed down, so we have to allow for those to have utilities, albeit not at the same rate we currently have, but certainly we'll have some utilities there. So the increased cost to open both of the new schools would be $2.91 million. 2.19, I'll get that out right, $2.19 million. So almost $2.2 million. So raises comprise $4.7 million, opening the 2 new schools, $2.1 million, for an increase in expense at $6.9 million. Now, I do want to say there are 5 extra positions in the budget that aren't up here because they weren't part of opening schools. There's a behavioral specialist position, 2 teacher assistants for ISS, for in-school suspension, and 2 physical therapists. All of those positions, we made cuts to other programs like summer school and public information, and to information technology in order to get those positions in the budget. So we're not asking or using new money for those positions, which is why I didn't highlight them here.
Forsman, on the opening Florence Bowser, why do we have 2 new positions when we're taking teachers from Drive? And I imagine some people from Creekside as well.
When you have special needs programs, sometimes when you're separating those kids, you still have to have a full teacher at each location. And in some cases with the way that, make sure I'm right now, make sure we're saying it right. And so when we move to the new school, it has more students. We can't move every single special needs teacher that we're going to need from Creekside because there's going to be students still there in that program. So we're going to need to have 2 new ones to help us with the kids that are coming to Florence Bowser.
Keeping in mind that some of the classes are self-contained and some of them are inclusion model, and where that teacher may need to stay there to serve the students in an inclusionary setting, the need for an inclusionary teacher or perhaps a self-contained, in addition to adding additional programs as well, could be.
I have a question about the salaries, the salary increase to $3,000 for each teacher. Is that going to go into their calculation for their retirement or
Absolutely.
It's a raise.
Right, it is not a bonus.
No, it is a
would
raise.
be added. It's a raise, yes.
Everyone's going to get a $3,000 raise? Then?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's good. The other thing was, we didn't have anything in here for coaches, coaching supplements or anything like that.
The typical, we are not recommending that we increase the supplement for coaches, no, but they do receive a supplement, coaches do, yes. look at,
Supplements.
increasing them.
Well, let's look at them compared to other.
Okay, we can,
areas.
yes.
Questions?
So the 4 million that we're asking the city for, almost half of it is to open the 2 new schools?
Million to open the new schools and 1.8 million to help with raises.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Thank you.
And if you'll recall on the budget development calendar, the March 8th meeting will be the date for the public hearing on the budget. That'll be here at 7 p.m. And you will be requesting that we set a special meeting to adopt the budget in later March, but that's later on this agenda as we move forward.
All right. Next, we have the approval of the second reading of the ordinances, 17/18 through 42 through 17/18 through 54. That's the action item. You like to take them one at a time, or the entire ordinances?
I think we ought to take the entire set of ordinances, because this is the second reading.
Second reading, yes. We're ready for
Mr.
action.
Chair, I make a motion that we adopt the ordinances 1718-42 through 1718-54.
Second.
If board members will please vote. Motion carried.
All right, next we have new business. Dr. Whitney, setting of special meetings, financial plans, recognizing the honor graduates.
Right. As I shared just a few minutes ago, we still have the March 8th meeting, which would be the regular meeting, but the recommendation is to have an additional meeting to approve the financial plan in addition to recognizing our honor grads at Lakeland High School. I'm proposing March 20th or the 21st as that date, if you're willing to accept that.
Day of the week of that?
March 20th is a Tuesday, and the 21st is Wednesday.
Any reason we're not bringing them to the regular school board meeting, just because we have too much going on?
That was the thought, yes. Yes, well, the 20th or the 21st, that would be an action item for someone to select a date.
And is it be what time?
7 p.m.
7 p.m.
Yes.
7 p.m., okay.
Tuesday would be a better day for me. The Tuesday.
All right, we're ready for action.
Do you want that in the form of a motion?
Yes.
Now, the
Okay.
time, I said 7, but you all can set that. Traditionally, it's been in the middle of the day just to approve the financial plan. It's up to you all.
Oh, so you want a motion about March the 8th and a motion
No,
about...
March the 8th is already
All
set.
right, so
Yeah,
you want a
that's-
motion about March the 20th, which would be a Tuesday, unless someone objects to that.
Would we
Okay.
do the honor grad presentation before the 7 o'clock meeting?
No, you're exactly right. I wasn't thinking. It should be at 7 because of the honor grads, right? I'm glad you said that. Couldn't take them out of school to be honored, so yeah, it should
Okay,
be.
so I move that we have a meeting on March the 20th, Tuesday at 7 p.m.
Second.
Board members will please vote. Motion carried.
The next we have public speaker on non-agenda topics. We had one person to sign up, Mr. Sidney Neighbor of the East Education Association. Mr. Neighbor?
Chairman Copeland, Dr. Whitney, school board members, and division officials, good evening. I'm Sydney Neighbors, the 8th grade teacher at John Yates Middle School, but I'm here tonight in my role as the president of the Education Association of Suffolk, the local affiliate of the Virginia National Education Association. Our membership consists of teachers, administrators, and education support professionals throughout the division. We use a lot of cliches as part of our vernacular, but one comes to mind that we say a lot, but it's one of the most important things that we have to think about. And when we talk about school budget, it certainly should be at the forefront, is that our children are our future. It is the sacred responsibility of the local education agency to provide the means for the success of these children. Thus, teachers and educational personnel are our future as well. It is important that the division recognize this, and the best way to thank us for our service is to compensate us well, very well. Whether the educator is just starting and is at the bottom of the scale, or whether they've served the children and the students here in Suffolk for 30 or more years, we all deserve substantial across-the-board salary increases for all educators. And I will say, looking at the financial plan tonight, I was very pleased. Of course, I hadn't seen that when I wrote my speech, but I had a little addendum here to this nice speech I typed up. But based on, I was very pleased to see what was presented. But I'm still going to finish my speech. The days of the educator starting and ending the career in the same school division are fast drawing to a close. In our area especially, we see teachers drive only a few, if any, extra miles to Chesapeake, Virginia Beach, and other divisions. Sometimes it's only a few $1,000s or less that causes them to relocate. And of course, we acknowledge that salary is not the only reason for change. The city and the division need to do the salary increases because we cannot afford to lose quality teachers. Our children deserve better. They deserve the best. And it is the school board that has the ability to make it better, to adequately provide for the educators in our division. The Commonwealth of Virginia is poised this year, more so than I can remember for a number of years, with our new governor. I have met him personally, and I'm confident that I know that the educators have a seat at the table with Dr. Northam, and I hope that we continue to see some state money increased, and the VEA and our local association are working towards that as well. We went to lobby this month to our legislators. Again, thank you for the proposed plan, and we will certainly be following the progress of that. Thank you for your support, and I'm confident that the board will do the right thing to increase salaries and show your dedication to our students. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Neighbor. Even though we had some members who are citizens, rather, who had not signed up, I'm going to ask the board at this time if they are willing to waiver the opportunity for these individuals, if a citizen input.
I certainly would like to hear what they have to say.
We got to get a motion on it.
Do we need a motion?
Motion.
I move that we have an opportunity for those not registered to speak to be allowed to speak this evening.
I'll second that.
Oh.
Board Member Bouchard,
Yes.
Board Member Brooks Buck,
Yes.
Board Member Dobransky, Board Member Mitnick,
Yes.
Board Member Skeeter,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Copeland,
Yes.
Chairman Copeland.
Chairman Copeland, I'm sorry,
Aye.
got to get it straight. Motion carried.
At this time, will you, Madam Chair, not Chair, but Clerk, give the information to the speakers who will be coming?
This is an opportunity that the board is allowing the public to share comments with the board regarding the matters that were discussed tonight. The board will listen to your comments, but will not respond to statements or questions at this time. Your comments may be only regarding the topics that were covered tonight at this meeting. Your comments may not be directed or be about any specific person or in a personal attack in a derogatory manner. Each speaker will be allotted 3 minutes or 5 minutes? Three. Will be allotted 3 minutes for their comments. If you're unable to make all of your comments within that 3-minute time period, you're more than welcome to submit in writing after the fact any additional information you would like the board to be aware of. When you do come forward, please state your name and your address before you begin making your comments. At this time, any speakers may come forward.
My name is Heather Wiggins. I reside at 2778 Mannon Road. I have already emailed you all. I spoke at the public input session last month, shared a lot of my very passionate feelings, thoughts, statistics, my overall concerns with the citywide proposal that was presented tonight. It was interesting to be able to see that tonight. There was, like Mr. Napier said, information online, but this was definitely a little bit more detail. When I thought about what else could I say, I looked to the former governor of Arizona, Jane D. Hull, and she says, at the end of the day, the most overwhelming key to a child's success is the positive involvement of parents. I'd like to ask all of the parents in the room tonight that oppose the citywide rezone to please stand, because these are the parents that want to see you all do what's right for our kids. I get that our school zone needs help. I get that our schools are overcrowded. I get that. The northern end of our city is just booming. My kids go to Pioneer and John F. Kennedy. They are successful. They are a kindergartner and a 6th grader. One is beginning his career, one is in the throes of his career. Uprooting them and moving them to some of the worst schools in our city is not the right answer. Whether it saves us money, whether it leads to overcrowding, let's take the time and the money and fix those schools and not rezone. Please, please do not vote for citywide rezone next month. We will be back. We may only be a little percent of that 446 surveys, but not all of the city is impacted like we are. There are 14,000 kids in this school zone. 14,000 kids are not being uprooted, but there are several hundred that are. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Lindsay Darden. I reside at 4100 Manning Road. You said that we were taking kids, no bus rides would be longer than 60 minutes. Why do my kids need to be on the bus any more than the 7 minutes and 26 seconds that it takes to get to the school from my house? I don't understand. You're going to take my kids from a school that is walking distance and take them to a school clear across town. And if my nephew needs me, I can't get a clear across town to get him if something happens. On top of everything else, you want to save money? Why are we pulling kids, Pioneer, why are we pulling kids from downtown Suffolk? Why are the kids from our area having to go to downtown? Segregation, all this other stuff. Stop uprooting our children. They have been in their schools. It is safe. People have built their homes where they chose to because of the school districts. Unless you can buy my house from me because I built my house for a Pacific school zone, my children should be able to go to the school that we chose. You shouldn't have to take my child 46 minutes up the road to another school versus 7 minutes to their school.
Thank you. Any other citizens would like to address the board?
Wilson. I reside at 5000 Linton Spring, number 404, and I would like to state my opposition against the changing of the times, because next year I'll be in high school, and pushing the times back not only would set apart my doctor's appointments, which would get me out of school later, but also I'll just be going to sleep later because I can still obtain those 8 hours of sleep without going to sleep any earlier. Also, the middle school times would stay the same, and many students in my grade, such as my peers, participate in JV activities, which would put them in study hall for 2 hours, which would be a greater cost to the city to hire somebody, to have somebody have study hall for them for 2 hours. Thank you.
Ma'am, what was your name, please?
Ethan Wilson.
Anyone else?
Michael Modisette from 2620 Freeman Mill Road. The whole bus ride length being 60 minutes and everything, my kids are already close to that. So I know you guys said you ain't gonna give no answers back, but the whole school time versus rezoning deal, I'm assuming that no matter what, if we vote on the change of the school time, that's going to affect the rezoning deal too, which would push
Those are separate issues.
the separate issues?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then the bank days, I'm from up north. I loved bank days. It was like a get out of jail free card. Up in Illinois, we had 6 days that were for snow days. If we didn't take those snow days, we got us out of school early. That was amazing.
Good idea.
Thank y'all.
Any other citizen? Well, we thank the three of you who came before us this evening. We have a listening ear, and we're here for your service. At this time, do we have to close? Do we have to close that? We already voted. Okay, we don't have to close that then. Now we have business by board members, and I'll start with Ms. Skeeter.
Thank you. I'd like to say thank you to our board clerk, Ms. Chavis, since this is the recognition month. I want to say she keeps me on time and alerts me quite often as when I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do. So I do thank you, Cindy, and I know the board likewise. We want to thank Pioneer for the lovely gift, and also the employees of Suffolk Public Schools. We thank each of you, and it's not just because what we are doing, it's what you're doing that keeps us alert and allows us to be able to do those kinds of things that the citizens of our city would like for us to do in education. Thank you so much, and I love each of you. Thank you.
Mr. Mitnick?
Yes. First thing I'd like to do is recognize the Nasm River High School Theater Arts Program. This past Saturday weekend, they were placed first place in the regional sectional in Group 5, and we wish them well as they continue on in their competitions. Next is my position as your representative on the Suffolk Education Foundation. I would like to remind everybody that this Saturday is the second annual Grown Up Spelling Bee. These are teams of adults, teachers, representing buildings, representing corporations. In our community, there'll be 13 teams of adults that are vying for the title of best spellers in the city of Suffolk. And this is open to the public. Tickets are $5. Students 8 and under are free, and we encourage you. It's at Kings Fork High School, and it begins at 2 o'clock. And our own superintendent and his assistant superintendents will have a team in the spelling bee.
Make no promises.
Well, I'd like to say ditto to those things. We do thank you, and we thank you parents also for coming and being a part of the conversation, letting us know how you feel and what your concerns are, because we can only guesstimate what you think if you don't tell us. So we encourage you to tell us what you think. I spent last month now and this month, I went to the General Assembly to advocate for funding for our schools. I spent the day talking to our legislators and asking them to remember that they are responsible for helping to fund public schools, and asking them also, while we're very thankful for the raise that starts in January, but the school year starts earlier than that. So in hopes that we can get our legislators to work with our governor, who does support our cause, to help bring some more money to our school system to help take some of the weight off the local share. But I also went the beginning of this week to Congress and spoke to the office of Senator Warner, his aides. He was in a committee meeting. Senator Kane came and spoke with us directly, and so did Bobby Scott's office, Representative Congressman Scott, and Congressman McEachin was willing to give us, they were willing to give us some time. Now, some priorities that we have, and I know there are some things that oftentimes we don't think about these things, but they do impact us when you hear what's going on the federal level. For instance, our career and technical education programs are impacted by the Carl Perkins Act, and we're trying to get reauthorization. If you are so inclined, especially our parents, if you are so inclined to write your representative, or if you don't feel like writing, call them up, get their lines busy to talk about these issues, because those monies impact what we can do here in Suffolk for you when we talk about our budgets and what we have and what we don't have. When we look at the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which began in 1975, was supposed to be funded by the federal government at 40%. It's being funded at 15%. That impacts us because we don't get a refund for most of the money that we put in these special programs. And we want to educate everybody, and we want to do it to the best of our abilities, but funds are finite, and we feel that the federal government should do its share, especially since it's a law that they mandated, but they're not funding. We want to look at not diverting public monies to private entities. That's the National School Boards Association. That's the public school stand that we hold. We're also looking at something that affects you when we talk about net neutrality. I know that you might have heard it in the news, but when we talk about having, bottom line, private companies take over some things, they can change some prices. If they change some prices or raise some prices, that means that 4% of our budget that goes for technology and those services can be greatly impacted. So we're looking at that. And the final thing is when people cheer one side or another, one way or another, for the government to shut down. We are a military area in the Tidewater, Hampton Roads area. Those persons who are active duty military who do not live in this area all the time do not have to pay real estate taxes, which is what we use to fund our schools. We need that impact aid because that is the money that the government is supposed to give us to supplement for the fact that we don't get taxes from many of those active duty military members. So just keep in mind when you call them, if you want to see me after this meeting for particular issues, call them and tell your representatives that you vote for what you want, because we need those funds in this region.
All right, thank you, Dr. Buck. Dr. Dabrowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman Copeland. I'd like to thank all of you for coming here tonight. This means a lot to me to see the people here and come here for a purpose. And this is something that's important in our government, in our making decision-making process. I want to thank you for coming and supporting the people and the things that you believe in, because that's the way our government works. I'd like to thank all of you for helping me out in the last couple of months as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Braxey.
I would also like to, I'm sorry, yes, I would like to also thank all of the parents who have come here and helped us with the decision about rezoning and about the schedule changes. Believe me, it does make a difference, and what you say is part of the decisions that we make. And the decisions, as earlier it was stated, are complex decisions. I would like to thank Heather Wiggins for coming up here and reminding us of how important it is to be a participating parent. I know it meant a lot to me as a teacher to know that there were parents who cared so much about their kids. It made a huge difference in their education. But we are listening and taking very seriously the things that you all are saying, even if you're from the north.
Lord Jesus have mercy.
My husband's from Rhode Island. He liked those bank days too. Thank you.
Thank you. We'd like to thank the board members for their comments, and certainly I'd like to say to the parents who appear before us, we appreciate your comments, and we're here as your servants, and so we'd like for you to know that. So at this time, we will have we don't have a closed meeting scheduled, right? Okay, thank you. And you may look at your information items, board members. If you have anything to comment on, we're free to hear it. I know we're going to get to that. Okay. Next, we will have the action of the closed meeting personnel report. Mrs. Bashar?
Yes, sir. I move that we accept the personnel report.
Second.
If board members will please vote. Motion carried.
And I'm sorry.
To have the pupil personnel report.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I move that we approve the pupil personnel reports.
Second.
Board members will please vote. Motion carried.
If there isn't any other business to come before this board, I declare that we will adjourn